My landlord gave me a bizarre list of rules. I wish I never broke rule #7. Of course. Here is a creepypasta, written in the requested style and length. My landlord gave me a bizarre list of rules. I wish I never broke rule #7. The search for an affordable apartment in any major city is its own unique kind of horror story. You wade through scams, shoeboxes listed as cozy studios, and apartments with roommates who have clearly never seen a sponge. So, when I found the listing for a one-bedroom at The Marlow, I thought it was a typo. The rent was a solid 40% below market rate. The pictures showed a spacious living room with high ceilings, a decent-sized bedroom, and hardwood floors that looked genuinely old, not like cheap laminate. The catch, I figured, would be the location, but it was in a perfectly fine, if unexciting, neighborhood. My desperation, fueled by a mountain of student debt and a soul-crushing data entry job, overruled my skepticism. I called the number. A man, with a dry, papery voice, answered. He introduced himself as Mr. Allister, the building's owner and sole manager. He agreed to show me the place that evening. The Marlow was an old brick building, probably a century old, squeezed between a modern condo complex and a laundromat. It had a certain Gothic charm, with ornate ironwork around the main door and gargoyles I couldn't quite make out in the fading light. The lobby was dim, smelling of dust, lemon polish, and something else, something vaguely like old meat. Mr. Allister matched his voice. He was a stick-thin man in a tweed suit that seemed a size too big for him. His eyes were pale and watery, and they never seemed to blink. "Apartment 4D, he said, his voice barely an echo in the tiled lobby. "As you can see, the building has character." The apartment was exactly as advertised. Huge, a little drafty, but clean. The rent was real. I was ready to sign my soul away on the spot. "I'll take it," I said, probably too eagerly. Mr. Allister didn't smile. He simply nodded and produced a lease from a worn leather briefcase. "There are, of course, a few building-specific regulations you must adhere to. They are non-negotiable." He handed me a separate sheet of paper, typed on an old-fashioned typewriter. The ink was slightly faded. "Rules for residents of the Marlow 1. No loud music or television after 10 p.m. Common courtesy is expected. 2. Upon entering your apartment, you must engage both the deadbolt and the chain lock. Every single time. No exceptions. 3. Do not leave any food, not even crumbs, on your counters or tables overnight. All food must be sealed and put away. This is not a suggestion. 4. Should you hear a faint lullaby coming from the heating vents, hum along with the tune until it fades. Do not attempt to locate the source. 5. You may occasionally see a woman in a faded floral dress standing in the hallway. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to her. She is not a tenant. Proceed to your apartment and lock the door. 6. Every Tuesday evening, before midnight, you are to leave a small saucer of milk just outside your front door. It will be gone by morning. Do not question this. 7. Never, under any circumstances, cover the peephole on your door. 8. There are no second chances. If a rule is broken, you will not receive a warning. I read the list twice. My heart was doing a frantic little tap dance against my ribs. This had to be a joke. Some weird hazing ritual for new tenants. "Is this serious?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. Mr. Allister's watery eyes fixed on me. "The Marlow is an old building, Mr. Davis. It has its own ecosystem. These rules ensure a peaceful coexistence for all parties. Are you capable of following them?" All I could see were the dollar signs I'd be saving each month. I could finally start paying down my loans, maybe even eat something other than instant ramen. A few weird rules? I could handle that. I was a rational adult. I'd just play along with the old man's eccentricities. "Yes," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "I can." I signed the lease. The first month was surprisingly normal. I followed the rules, mostly out of a weird sense of obligation. Locking the chain felt silly, but I did it. I scrubbed my counters clean every night. Tuesday's milk offering felt like the most ridiculous part. I bought a cheap ceramic saucer, and every Tuesday, I'd pour a little 2% milk into it and set it on the welcome mat, feeling like an idiot. But every Wednesday morning, it was gone. Not tipped over, not licked clean by a stray cat. The saucer would be sitting there, bone dry, as if it had been washed. The weirdness started in the second month. It was a cold Wednesday night when I first heard it. A tinny, off-key melody drifting from the heating vent in the living room. Rock-a-bye baby, on the treetop. My blood ran cold. Rule hash 4. My throat was tight, but I forced myself to hum along, my voice a shaky, pathetic buzz. I hummed and hummed, my eyes glued to the vent. Just as the song was about to loop, it stopped. The silence that followed was heavier and more absolute than any I had ever experienced. I didn't sleep much that night. A few weeks later, I saw her. I was coming home late from work, fumbling for my keys in the dimly lit hallway. At the far end, just standing there, was a figure, a woman. Her head was bowed, so I couldn't see her face, but she wore a drab, faded floral dress just like the list said. Rule hash 5. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to her. Every instinct screamed at me to say something. Can I help you? Or, are you okay? But the memory of Mr. Alistair's unblinking eyes stopped me. I stared at the floor, unlocked my door with trembling hands, slipped inside, and immediately threw the deadbolt and slid the chain. My back was pressed against the door, my heart hammering. I waited a full 2 minutes before I dared to look through the peephole. The hallway was empty. Life at the Marlowe became a tightrope walk of anxiety. The rules weren't just suggestions from a kooky landlord, they were laws of nature in this building. I saw other doors with milk saucers on Tuesdays. I heard faint humming from neighboring apartments on nights when the lullaby played. We were all in on it. We were all participants in this strange, silent ritual. But Rule hash 7 was the one that gnawed at me. Never cover the peephole. Why? It felt like the most invasive rule of all. The small fisheye lens became a source of constant paranoia. Was it for me to look out or for something else to look in? I'd find myself staring at it, this tiny glass circle, wondering what it was for. Sometimes, late at night, I felt an intense, irrational pressure on the other side of it, as if someone was standing right there, watching, waiting. I'd look, of course. There was never anything there but the perpetually dim, empty hall. My friend, Sarah, thought I was losing my mind. "Dude, this is not normal," she said one Friday night, sitting on my couch and nursing a beer. "An old man is making you leave milk out for fairies and you're just doing it? And this peephole thing? It's creepy. What if he's the one looking in? He probably has a master key with a reverse peephole viewer or something." Her words planted a new kind of fear in my mind. Not a supernatural fear, but a grimy, real-world one. The idea of Mr. Alistair, with his watery eyes, standing silently in the hall, peering in at me. It made my skin crawl. Suddenly, Rule hash 7 wasn't about protecting me from some hallway ghost. It felt like a violation of my privacy. "You should cover it," Sarah urged. "Just for one night. Put a piece of tape over it. Reclaim your space." After she left, her words echoed in the silent apartment. Reclaim my space. It sounded so simple, so empowering. The lullaby hadn't played in weeks. I hadn't seen the floral dress lady, and the milk ritual was just a mindless chore. I was letting my imagination get the better of me. Sarah was right. It was probably just a weird old man on a power trip. My defiance felt like a shot of adrenaline. I went to my desk, pulled off a piece of black electrical tape, and walked to the door. For a moment, I hesitated. Rule hash height floated in my mind. There are no second chances. Shaking my head, I scoffed at my own cowardice. I pressed the tape firmly over the peephole. The small circle of light from the hallway was extinguished. The door felt solid, secure, and most importantly, private. For the first time since I moved in, I felt like I was in control. I went to bed feeling proud. I fell asleep quickly. I woke up to silence. A deep, profound silence that felt wrong. The usual groans and sighs of the old building were gone. Even the hum of the refrigerator had ceased. It was a suffocating, listening silence. Then, I heard it. A soft scratch, scratching sound. It was coming from the front door. It was a tiny, insistent sound, like a fingernail dragging lightly across wood. My breath hitched. I slid out of bed, my feet silent on the cold floorboards. I crept into the living room, my eyes fixed on the door. The scratching was localized. It was coming from the exact spot where the peephole was. Something was on the other side, scratching at the tape. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Then it stopped. A wet, soft thump sounded against the door, right at eye level, as if someone had gently pressed their face against it. My blood turned to ice water. I was frozen, standing in the middle of my living room, staring at the door. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. "I know you're in there," a voice whispered. It wasn't Mr. Allister. The voice was a gurgling, wet rasp, like someone trying to speak through a throat full of water. It was coming from the other side of the door, but it sounded like it was right next to my ear. "I can't see you," the voice rasped again, a note of confused frustration in its tone. "Did you go away?" Then I saw movement at the bottom of the door. A dark shape was sliding through the mail slot. No, not through the mail slot, under the door itself. The gap was paper thin, but something was pushing its way through. It was my ceramic saucer, the one I used for the milk. It scraped across the hardwood floor and came to a stop a few feet into my apartment. It wasn't empty. It was filled to the brim with a dark, thick liquid that smelled coppery, like old blood. Floating in the center of the liquid was an eye, a pale, milky, unblinking eye, identical to Mr. Allister's. It swiveled in the dark liquid until it was staring directly at me. A scream was trapped in my throat. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. The doorknob began to jiggle, softly at first, then more violently. The metal rattled in its housing. Then came the banging. A furious, splintering assault on the door. Boom, boom, boom. The whole frame shook. I finally understood. The deadbolt, the chain, they weren't for keeping burglars out. They were for keeping that out. "The peephole is for me!" The gurgling voice shrieked from the hallway, the sound contorting with rage. "I need to see. The offering is safe. I need to see. You took away my eyes." The wood of the door began to splinter around the lock. The peephole wasn't for me to look out. It was for it to look in. It was a way for the creature to check on its weekly offering, to make sure the occupant was still there, still following the rules, still part of the ecosystem. By covering it, I hadn't hidden from it. I had blinded it. I had broken the pact, and now it thought the apartment was empty. It thought it could come in. The chain groaned, the metal straining against the screws. A long, dark crack appeared in the center of the door. I scrambled away, crab walking backward into the kitchen, my mind's a blank wall of pure terror. The banging stopped. The silence returned, 1,000 times more terrifying than the noise. Then, a new sound. A slow, deliberate scraping. It wasn't coming from the hallway anymore. It was coming from the heating vent in the living room. It's dark in this closet now. I'm typing this on my phone, the battery at 3%. The scraping stopped about an hour ago. I can hear it now though. A soft, wet breathing sound, just outside the closet door. It's patiently waiting. It knows I'm in here. I can smell it, that same scent from the lobby. Old dust, lemon polish, and rotting meat. I see now. The rules weren't for my safety. They were instructions. Instructions on how to properly care for and feed a pet. I wish I had never broken Rule #7. I wish I had just let it watch. I stumbled upon a live stream from the dark web. Then they started talking to me. I haven't slept in 3 days. Not really. I've drifted into those weird, staticky micro-sleeps where you jolt awake a second later, your heart hammering against your ribs because you think you heard a floorboard creak. Every shadow in my motel room is a distorted figure. Every car that passes on the highway outside is them, coming to finish the show. I know it's irrational. I also know that what happened to me defies all logic, so maybe a little paranoia is healthy. It started with boredom, as I imagine most descents into hell do. I'm a freelance video editor. It sounds more glamorous than it is. Mostly it means I spend 14 hours a day in my dimly lit apartment, fueled by stale coffee, meticulously cutting out the ums and ahs from corporate training videos. It's soul-crushing work. That night, I was procrastinating on a particularly grim project for a dental supply company. To escape, I'd fallen down a familiar rabbit hole. Reddit's unsolved mysteries and internet lore forums. I clicked through stories of abandoned websites, cryptic YouTube channels, and ARGs that blurred the line between game and reality. It was all fascinating, a harmless form of digital ghost hunting. In a comment thread on a post about the Marianas Web, the supposed deepest, most inaccessible part of the internet, someone posted a link. It wasn't a normal hyperlink. It was a long string of nonsensical characters ending in .onion. Underneath, the commenter had written a single taunting sentence. If you want to see the real internet, stop being a tourist. I knew what an onion link was. I'd read about the Tor browser, the anonymizing network that lets you access the so-called dark web. I'd always been too sensible, or maybe just too scared, to ever download it. It was the digital equivalent of walking down a dark alley in a city you don't know. But that night, stewing in a potent cocktail of boredom, caffeine, and existential dread from a video about proper flossing techniques, I felt a reckless curiosity bloom in my chest. I downloaded Tor. The browser itself was clunky and slow. When I pasted the onion link into the address bar, it took a full minute to load, the connection bouncing around the globe. I felt a cheap, illicit thrill, like a kid sneaking a look at his dad's adult magazines. What finally loaded wasn't some black market or hacker forum. It was a single, stark web page. Black background, white text. There was no title, no ads, no navigation links. There was only an embedded video player, and beneath it, a simple chat box. The video player was live. The stream was of a room. It was grimy, industrial, the walls were stained concrete, and a single bare bulb hung from the ceiling, casting a sickly yellow light. In the center of the frame was a simple wooden chair. That was it. No people, no movement. The only audio was a low, almost subsonic hum. Beneath the video, a small counter read, "Viewers, 1, me. I was the only one watching." I stared at the empty chair for what must have been 10 minutes. It was profoundly unsettling in its stillness. It was like a piece of minimalist, disturbing art. I thought maybe it was a looped video, a prank to lure in curious Redditors. To test it, I typed a message into the chat box. "Me, is this real?" No response. I waited. The empty chair sat there, mocking me. I was about to close the window, dismissing it as a waste of time, when I saw it. A fly. It landed on the back of the chair, crawled around for a second, then buzzed off into the darkness beyond the camera's view. It was live. My heart rate kicked up a notch. So, someone, somewhere, was broadcasting a live feed of an empty room. Why? Was it a hostage situation waiting to happen? An art project? My mind raced through possibilities, each one darker than the last. I watched for another hour. Nothing happened. The relentless mundanity was more unnerving than any overt horror would have been. I finally closed the browser and tried to put it out of my mind, but the image of that lonely chair under the buzzing light was seared into my brain. The next night, I went back. I couldn't help myself. The link was still in my history. This time, the viewer count was 2. The room was the same, but the chair had been moved a few inches to the left. Someone had been there. The other viewer was silent. I didn't type anything either. We just watched, together. The two of us, staring into this strange, empty space from opposite ends of the globe. This became my ritual. Every night after my work was done, I'd open Tor and watch the empty room. Sometimes the viewer count was 1, sometimes 3 or 4. No one ever spoke in the chat. The scene would always be slightly different. A dirty rag in the corner one night, a discarded newspaper the next. It was a slow, silent, collaborative storytelling project, and I was hooked. I felt like an urban explorer who had found a forgotten, haunted corner of the digital world. The night everything changed was a Tuesday. I logged on around 2 a.m. Viewers, 1. It was just me. Tonight, something was new. On the floor, just beside one of the chair legs, was a small red rubber ball. It looked like a child's toy. The sight of it in that desolate room sent a chill down my spine. I stared at the ball, my mind starting to build a narrative. Who did it belong to? What happened to them? I was so absorbed that I didn't notice the notification pop up on my main monitor outside the Tor browser. It was a direct message on Instagram. I hadn't posted anything in months. The message was from an account with no profile picture and a jumble of letters for a name. It contained a single sentence. "The Watcher. You like the ball?" I felt the blood drain from my face. My apartment, which had been a cozy sanctuary moments before, suddenly felt cold and vast. It had to be a coincidence. A troll from the Reddit thread who had somehow found my social media. It had to be. My hands trembling, I moved my mouse back to the Tor window. I was about to close it, to purge my computer and never look back, but my eyes fell on the chat box. There was a new message there, posted just seconds ago. The Watcher. Don't go, Mark. They used my name. A strangled noise escaped my throat. I slammed my laptop shut. I stood up and started pacing my apartment, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. How? How could they know my name? I used a VPN on top of Tor. My Instagram profile was private. There was no logical way for them to connect a random, anonymous viewer on a dark web stream to my real-world identity. My phone buzzed on the desk. An unknown number. I stared at it, my body frozen in a state of pure primal fear. It buzzed again, with a sense of dread so profound it felt like I was moving underwater. I picked it up. It was a text message. Unknown. We can still see. You should cover your webcam. I looked at my laptop. There it was, the tiny, black, cyclopean eye of the built-in webcam. I always assumed the little green light would turn on if it was active. It wasn't on. I lunged for a roll of electrical tape and slapped a piece over the lens. I felt a tiny, pathetic surge of relief. My phone buzzed again. Unknown. That's no fun. Then, the live stream in the Tor browser, which I could still hear humming from my closed laptop, changed. The low hum was replaced by a new sound. The gentle hiss of rain on asphalt and the distant rumble of traffic. I slowly, reluctantly opened my laptop. The stream was no longer showing the empty room. It was showing the street outside my apartment building. The camera was positioned across the road, looking up at my window. The quality was grainy, as if from a cheap phone, and the lens was dotted with rain. I could see the soft glow of my own monitor illuminating the window of my third-floor apartment. My window. I stumbled back from the desk, my legs weak. This wasn't some hacker in another country. They were here. They were outside. The Watcher. You're a popular guy, Mark. I looked at the viewer count. It was climbing. 10, 25, 50. The chat box, once silent, exploded with activity. User 483. He's on the third floor. Crow eats eye. The lights are on. He's home. Mr. Smiles. This is a good one. He looks scared. The Watcher. He is. I finally understood. I wasn't just a viewer. I was the star of the new show. The empty room. The red ball. That was just the pre-show. The curtain raiser for the main event. They were luring people in, isolating them, and then turning the camera around. The other viewers, they weren't just watching with me. They were the ones holding the cameras. My phone buzzed. A new text. Unknown. We brought you the chair. The banging on my apartment door was so loud and sudden that I screamed. It wasn't a knock. It was a furious, splintering slam, like someone was, throwing their entire body weight against it. Boom. 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 The wooden frame shuddered. The chain I never used rattled uselessly. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers fumbling as I tried to dial 911. What would I even say? The chat on the live stream was a frenzy. Mr. Smiles, get him, get him. User 1. Don't damage the merchandise. The Watcher. The door prize is behind the door. Another text came through. It was a picture. A selfie. A man with a wide, unnatural grin was standing in the hallway outside my apartment. Behind him, I could see the number on my door. 3B. In his hand, he held a red rubber ball. The banging stopped. A new sound started. The high-pitched whine of a drill biting into the lock. That was it. Fight or flight. I chose flight. My apartment had a rusty fire escape accessible through the bedroom window. I never once thought I'd use it. I slid the window open, the cold, wet air hitting my face. I didn't grab my wallet or my keys. I just grabbed my phone and scrambled out onto the rickety metal platform. My hands were slick with rain as I clambered down the ladder, my bare feet slipping on the rungs. I hit the alleyway hard, stumbling but not falling. I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran, the sounds of the city swallowing the noise from my apartment. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs felt like jelly. I put my phone on airplane mode and didn't stop until I was on the other side of town. That was 3 days ago. I'm in a cheap motel 2 states away. I bought a burner phone with cash. I've been trying to piece it all together, but my mind is a fractured mess. Last night, in a moment of sheer idiotic weakness, I bought a prepaid data card, reinstalled the Tor browser on my new phone, and found the link. The stream is still live. It's a feed from inside my apartment. They're using my webcam. My home is trashed, furniture overturned, papers scattered everywhere. In the center of my living room, where my coffee table used to be, sits a single empty wooden chair. The viewer count is over 300. The stream has a new title now. Stage 1, The Audition. Status, awaiting new contestant. I'm staring at the people walking past my motel room window now. The tired travelers, the cleaning staff, the guy delivering pizza. And I wonder, as I watch them through the grimy glass, which one of them is just a tourist and which one is the watcher. This small town has one rule: don't be outside. After sunset, I found out why. The real estate agent, a cheerful grandmotherly woman named Beatrice, handed me the keys with a smile that was just a little too wide. "Welcome to Havenwood, Mr. Thorne. I do hope you'll be happy here." "I'm sure I will," I said, juggling the keys and a box of kitchen supplies. "It's certainly quiet." "Oh, it's that," she said, her eyes crinkling. "We're a peaceful town. We like our routines. Just one little town quirk you should know about, to help you settle in." I braced myself for some convoluted recycling schedule or bizarre parking ordinance. "The evening bell," she said, her tone shifting from cheerful to serious in a heartbeat. "It rings every day, exactly at sunset. You'll hear it no matter where you are in town. When it rings, you go inside. You lock your door, and you don't come back out until the morning bell at sunrise." I must have looked as confused as I felt. "Is that a law? A curfew?" Beatrice gave a little laugh, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. "Oh, not a law, dear. No, nothing so formal. It's just what we do. It's how we keep things peaceful. You'll get the hang of it." She patted my arm, her touch surprisingly cold, and then bustled off to her car, leaving me on the porch of my new, ridiculously affordable rental house. I was a structural engineer, sent to this isolated pocket of the Pacific Northwest to oversee the retrofitting of a century-old bridge. The job was supposed to last 6 months. Havenwood was the only town within a commutable distance. From the moment I'd arrived, I felt like I'd stepped back in time. It was a town of quaint clapboard houses, a single main street with a general store, a diner, and a post office. The air smelled of pine and damp earth. But beneath the Rockwellian veneer, there was a strange tension. I saw what Beatrice meant on my first evening. As the sun began to dip below the jagged tree-lined horizon, casting the valley in hues of orange and purple, a deep, resonant bell began to toll from somewhere near the center of town. The sound wasn't alarming, but it was heavy, final, and like a switch had been flipped, the town shut down. The few people still on the street picked up their pace, heads down, not making eye contact. Porch lights flicked on. The solid thump click of deadbolts echoed from the houses around me. Within 5 minutes of the bell's first toll, the streets were utterly, unnervingly deserted. I stood on my own porch, watching the last of the light fade, a strange knot of anxiety tightening in my gut. It was absurd. A whole town playing a collective game of make-believe. I brought my golden retriever Buster with me for the project. In the first couple of weeks, he was my only real companion. We'd explore the woods surrounding the town during the day, but our walks were always cut short by my anxious glances at the descending sun. I followed the rule. I chalked it up to a local eccentricity, a story I'd tell my friends back in the city. I tried asking about it once. I was at the general store, buying groceries. Mr. Henderson, the proprietor, was a stoic man in his late 60s with hands like gnarled oak. "So, what's the deal with the bell?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Some old tradition?" He paused in the middle of bagging my bread. He looked up, and his eyes, which were usually a faded, distant blue, seemed to focus on me with an unnerving intensity. "It's the rule, son," he said, his voice low. "It's for the best. You're a smart fellow. You'll figure out it's best not to be curious." That was the end of the conversation. The subject was closed. The longer I stayed, the more I noticed the little things. The windows on the houses weren't just glass. Most had heavy, solid wood shutters that could be bolted from the inside. The front doors weren't the flimsy things you'd find in a suburb. They were thick, reinforced oak or even steel. The town wasn't just quiet at night, it was tomb silent. No cars, no stray dogs barking, not even the chirp of crickets. The silence was absolute, a heavy blanket that smothered all sound. My skepticism began to curdle into a low-grade dread. These people weren't just quirky, they were afraid. Genuinely, deeply afraid. But of what? Bears? Mountain lions? It didn't make sense. The breaking point came about a month into my stay. It was a Friday. I'd had a long, frustrating day at the bridge site. I got home later than usual, the sun already kissing the tops of the pines. I let Buster out into the fenced backyard while I started making dinner. I was grilling steaks on the back porch, lost in thought, the smell of charred meat filling the air. That's when I heard it, a frantic, high-pitched yelping from the front of the house. My heart leaped into my throat. I ran through the house to the front yard. A section of the picket fence was broken, and Buster was gone. I heard his panicked barking echoing from down the street. He must have seen a squirrel and, in his excitement, busted right through the rotten wood. And then, the evening bell began to toll. Its deep, mournful bong echoed through the valley. A wave of ice-cold panic washed over me. I saw my neighbor, Mr. Abernathy, give me a wide-eyed, horrified look from his driveway before he scrambled inside, his door slamming shut with a deafening finality. I had a choice, a stupid, impossible choice. My dog, my best friend, was out there, lost and scared. Or I could obey a rule I didn't understand, a rule that felt like a mass delusion. There was no choice at all. "Buster!" I yelled, my voice sounding thin and reedy in the sudden silence. I sprinted down the street in the direction of his barking. The last rays of sunlight vanished, and the world was plunged into a deep, velvety twilight. Every door was shut, every window was dark or shuttered. I was alone. I found him a few blocks away, cowering under a rose bush in someone's front yard, his leash tangled. He was whining, a low, terrified sound I'd never heard him make before. "It's okay, buddy, it's okay," I whispered, untangling him. "Let's go home." My relief was so profound that, for a moment, I forgot my fear. I stood up, Buster's leash clenched in my hand, and turned to head back. That's when I saw it. The silence I'd noticed from inside my house was different when you were standing in the middle of it. It was a living thing, a predatory, listening silence. The air was unnaturally still, and the town, it didn't look right. In the deep twilight, the angles of the houses seemed sharper, the shadows deeper and somehow wrong. Then I saw the first one. A figure emerged from the side of a house down the street. It looked like a person, but it moved with a slow, disjointed gait, like a marionette with tangled strings. It glided onto the sidewalk and just stopped, its head tilted up towards the moonless sky. Buster let out a low growl, the fur on his back standing on end. Another figure appeared from behind a car, and another from a darkened porch. Within minutes, the street was populated. There were dozens of them. They moved with a silent, dreamlike grace, but every movement was fundamentally wrong. A woman's arm bent at a slightly unnatural angle. A man walked in a perfect, repeating circle in the middle of an intersection. They all had the same placid, empty expressions on their faces. Their eyes were open but vacant, reflecting the dim light from the street lamps like polished stones. My blood ran cold when I recognized one of them. It was Beatrice, the real estate agent. She was standing on a lawn, her head craned back at an angle so extreme, I was sure her neck must be broken, her arms held out to her sides as if waiting to receive a morbid sacrament. They weren't zombies. They weren't ghosts. They were empty vessels. I started backing away slowly, pulling a whimpering Buster with me. I needed to get back to my house. I just had to make it a few more blocks. I kept to the shadows, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. They hadn't noticed me. They were all lost in their own silent, bizarre rituals. I was halfway down my own street when I made my mistake. My foot caught on an uneven piece of sidewalk, and I stumbled, letting out a sharp, involuntary gasp. It was as if I'd fired a gun. Every single one of them stopped. In perfect, horrifying unison, every head on the street snapped in my direction. The placid expressions didn't change, but dozens of pairs of vacant, soulless eyes were now locked directly onto me. A sound started. Then, a soft, dry rustling noise, like autumn leaves skittering across a tombstone. It was coming from all of them. It was the only sound they made. And then they began to move towards me. They didn't run. They glided. They flowed over the lawns and down the sidewalks, their movements unnaturally smooth and fast. They converged on my position from all sides. A silent, implacable tide of wrongness. I ran. I've never known terror like that. It was a pure animal panic. I dragged Buster behind me, his paws scrabbling on the pavement. I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so violently I could barely fit the key in the lock. The rustling was getting louder, closer. It sounded like it was right behind me. I threw the door open, shoved Buster inside, and slammed it shut just as the first few figures reached my porch. I threw the deadbolt home. The heavy thud was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath, my body trembling uncontrollably. I stumbled to the peephole and looked out. My porch was crowded with them. Their pale, empty faces were inches from my door. I could see Mr. Henderson from the store, his face a blank mask, his hand raised, rhythmically tapping a single, long fingernail against the wood of my door. Tap, tap, tap. Beatrice was there, her face pressed against the small window next to the door, her dead eyes staring right through me. They weren't trying to break in. They were just watching, waiting. I spent the night huddled in the farthest corner of my house, with Buster shivering in my arms. The soft, incessant tapping on my door and windows didn't stop until the first hint of dawn painted the sky. Then, the morning bell rang. A clear, cheerful chime. The tapping stopped. The rustling faded. I waited for a full hour before I dared to look outside again. The street was empty. Then, Mr. Abernathy's door opened, and he emerged to get his newspaper, whistling a cheerful tune. A school bus rumbled by. I saw Beatrice drive past in her car, and she gave my house a bright, friendly wave. They didn't remember. Or worse, they did, and this was all part of it. I finally understood. The rule wasn't to protect the residents of Havenwood from some monster that comes out at night. The rule was to protect outsiders from the residents of Havenwood. Havenwood. I packed my car that morning. I didn't care about the job or the lease. I put Buster in the passenger seat and drove. I didn't look in the rearview mirror until Havenwood was miles behind me. The bridge will have to find another engineer. Because some places have their routines, they have their secrets, and some rules are not meant to be broken, because the explanation is so much worse than your darkest imagination. You don't just find out why. You become the reason the next person is warned.